everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nicole and this is Dusty Book Sniffers, and today we're here for a weekly wrap up, so let's get into it. Well, good morning and good evening everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for taking some time out of your day and spending it with me while I prattle on about the books that I have read. So today we are here for a weekly wrap up. As I said, we've got a couple of books to talk about. Three I read, one I DNF'd, which was supposed to be a group reread, and I just couldn't do it. So we're going to start with that one. All right, I'm pretty sure you all know which one this is. All right, so it is the Marriage Portrait. I said that I was going to reread this. I got into about chapter 3 and I just couldn't do it. I still stand where I stood when I read this back in March, was it? Somewhere like that, when I was reading the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. This made it onto the short list, so I did say that I was going to read the short list again with the group members, but I just cannot do this. This book is definitely not for me. I just don't like it. It's just very boring. It's not holding my interest. It barely held my interest the first time, but I wanted to give it another go just to see, maybe because I was reading them too fast, or like sometimes you can really miss the point, or you might feel like it's it wasn't for you, but in actual fact it was a book for you. But I've given it another go. Like I said, I think I got to it was 3 or 4 chapters I got into it anyway. I can't remember what the page. I've taken my bookmark out because I'm like, yep, not doing it. I just wasn't interested to reread it again. So that's my honest opinion on it. It wasn't a great read for me the first time around, but in saying that, it's not for me. It doesn't mean it's not for you. You might like that, but we know what's going to happen in the opening parts of the book. So, and I've talked about this in the Women's Prize for Fiction, which I will link up down below, and you can hear my actual thoughts about this. But the opening thing in here, historical note, in 1560, 15-year-old Lucrenza, I think is how you pronounce the name, left Florence to begin her married life with Alfonso, Duke of Ferrara. Less than a year later, she would be dead. The official cause of her death was given as putrid fever, but it was rumoured that she was murdered. So basically, this book is covering her life up until she leaves and what happens beyond her leaving her parents and all that sort of stuff. Like, the first chapter was okay, but even when I read it the first time, but it just went downhill from there for me. It was just very bland. I didn't find it intriguing at all. Because I felt like I already knew what was going to happen. Like, yes, there's a twist and all that sort of stuff through it, but that's not a spoiler. Like, there is twists and turns through it and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't enough after having that historical note in the beginning, like before you even started reading it. It just made it ridiculous and redundant to me. So that's where I'm at again. So I DNF this one. It's done. It does have some, as I said, it does have some twists and turns in it that, some might find compelling. And I'm not totally disregarding Maggie O'Farrell. I have another book that has been highly recommended by most people that said, look, you don't judge Maggie O'Farrell on The Marriage Portrait. So I've got Hamnet on the shelf, so I'm going to give her another go and see where we end up with that. But right now, not my favourite author. So the next book that I read was a bingo prompt, and this is by Paula Hawkins, and she wrote Girl on a Train. I must admit, I loved Girl on a Train. I thought that was really good. I thought it was better than Gone Girl, but that's just my opinion. It's very divided because they're very similar books. This one here, I've only given this one a 3.5 star, mainly because I sort of had an idea of what was going on. Like, I sort of had an idea who actually did end up killing the person that died in it. So basically, we have a young girl that has some impulse control issues. The main protagonist has a brain injury. She was hit by a hit and run when she was younger, and she had a brain injury from that, and she ends up having some impulse control. So she has a strained relationship with her stepmother. Her mother has left the scene when she was younger. We find out why that happened. Questioning that mother's judgment. So that's all I'm going to say on that. It kept me turning the pages. I wanted to know what was happening and all that sort of stuff, but it was slightly predictable, in my opinion. It wasn't it wasn't as good as Girl on the Train. I really like that. There is another book of Paula Hawkins that I want to read. I think it's In Deep Water or something it's called. I've heard that that is pretty good as well. But this one just didn't hit the mark for me. In her scheme of her books, I think this one was published. Yeah, this one was published in 2021. I think her other books were previous to that. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I still liked turning the pages and finding out what was happening. I thought that some of the twists and turns were really good, but essentially there is a murder and the main protagonist is essentially going to be charged with it, and then the story unfolds. But we're going back and to discover how she ended up with her brain injury, how her mother left, and how she has a strained relationship and why, and all that sort of stuff, and and all the things that she does and how they're all interconnected in some way. So yeah, there's some characters in here that you're going to love to hate, and there's some characters that you're going to fall in love with, which I actually fell in love with. Not fell in love with. I really liked the main protagonist because she was struggling, and that moment when something is so inappropriate but you start laughing. I could so relate to that because I am terrible for that. But yeah, it was great. I did relate to, not that I've got a brain injury, but I did relate to some of the things that she was doing and all that sort of stuff. So I did have a good time. I only gave it 3.5 though, because I didn't think it was Paula Hawkins' best work. But I am glad that I have read it, and it's another one off my physical TBR. So I'm happy with that. And it was a bingo prompt, so that was awesome. All right, so I've also spun up the wheel, and as I said, I spun up the wheel. I also spun up the wheel for The Marriage Portrait as well. And then I've spun the wheel again. Okay, so I'm spinning the wheel again to find out what I'm going to be reading next. Let's spin. Okay, so book 18, let me count. It's the top one, and that is the part 2 to the Thursday Murder Club and The Man Who Died Twice. All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. It is Sunday, the 17th of September. Okay, we're in September, not October. I keep going to say October for some reason. I think it's because I'm working on a Halloween piece for diamond painting, so I think that that's what the problem is. So anyway, today is post 24-hour sprints, of which I spent 20 hours on the sprints. I obviously went and done other things during the sprints and all the rest of it. I wasn't on camera for that entire time, but out of that 20 hours, I was on camera for 4 hours. The day started at 6 a.m. and it just went from there, and I just basically had the playlist open and I kept popping here, there and everywhere and hanging out with everybody in the comments and getting some books read. So when I started the sprints, and the 24-hour sprints, if you don't know, Neva's brainchild, and it happens once a month, and I've been hanging out with them. I hung out in the comments a couple of times prior to me actually joining on camera, and I think it's been the last 3 months that I have been hanging out with them, and yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. Because the first month I hung out with Brooklyn on her channel, which is Brooklyn Reads, and then I hung out with Leandra on her channel, because what happens is, if you don't know, basically there are 6 channels all up, 3 on the Friday when it starts, and then on the Saturday there's another 3, and each channel spends 4 hours, and we all hang out together in the comments or on screen and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun, and I did a silly thing and decided that I was going to hang out from when I was on screen until it finished. But that was a good thing, because I actually got 2 books done. I got a lot of diamond painting done. I hung out with my granddaughter, who is here, and she did some diamond painting and some colouring and some watching of TV, and we went and did grocery shopping. We got our bikes ready. We just sort of potted around the house and just had a pretty relaxing day. I feel a little bit zombied right now, but that doesn't matter. We managed to get some books read. Now, so I started the day with The Man Who Died Twice. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club. I read the other one last week, was it? Yeah, I talked about it, and it spun up again this week. And so I was really, really happy with being able to move on to the second book. And I got notification that the third and the fourth book are on their way to me. So yeah, excuse me, I got them really, really cheap. So I got the third book for well, cheap to me anyway, because sometimes books can be a little bit pricey. So I got one for $12 and the other one I think it was $16. So yeah, so I was happy to get those. So they're both on the way, and that blows my budget. But this one is following the same characters that we had in the first one. This time there are diamonds involved, and the man who died twice is actually Elizabeth's ex-husband, and he was also a MI5. I don't know. I get confused with the names of their police force. So yeah, I think they were operatives, basically spies, I guess you would call them. 007 types. I guess. So anyway, the man who died twice, her ex-husband turns up, and basically we know that from the get-go that there's something suspicious about this guy, because she's quite shocked by the letter that she receives, and Elizabeth basically ends up meeting with him and then finds out there's some diamonds that have gone missing, and then the mystery unfolds from there. Now, the first one I absolutely loved. I can't remember what my star rating was, because, you know, one book leads into another after a while. This one I didn't like. I know I didn't like this one as much. It was still a great book. It wasn't as good as the first one, so I'm hoping that the third and the fourth one are good as well. I still gave this a 3.5 star, a solid 3.5 star. It is still a really good read. I love the banter between Joyce and Elizabeth. I love it when we get Joyce writing in her journal, and and she's just being really flippant with her comments and stuff like that. The funniest part though in this, and this is a slight little spoiler, and you'll giggle if you haven't read this, you'll giggle too when she starts talking about it. So she, at the beginning of the book, she's talking about either getting a dog and also like trying something new. Now all these characters are in their 70s and they're in a retirement village, okay? So she wants to try something new, and so she wants to get an Instagram account. She wants to start doing Instagram, and she also wants to get a dog to keep her company. After some series of events that happened in the first book, and this is her way of dealing with it, right? So they're trying to talk her out of getting this dog, because she's 70, so any dog that she gets, she is going to have to outlive. So they decided on getting a rescue dog, so that's fine, but she wants to also start Instagram, and no one really had an opinion about the Instagram. So anyway, she tried to open it up under like her name, and then tried her date of birth and then all that sort of stuff, and then she ended up opening up Create Joy 69, and through the book little snippets would come in, and oh, I've already got a message on that, and when I heard that was her name, I'm like, yeah, I know what you're gonna get. It goes through the book, and I'm like, yeah, you need to change that. That was my very first thought. You need to really change that, because you are going to get some unwanted messages and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, it goes through, and then she writes, oh, I've already got one message, and then, oh, someone's helped me to get to, because I don't know how to use Instagram, and she doesn't know how to get to her messages and all this sort of stuff, because the message request. I'll leave it up to your imagination what happens there, but I just cracked up laughing. It was so funny. Like, it was such a funny little thing to put in there. But yeah, and I could just imagine, like, that would be something that my grandmother would probably do. So I think that's why it gave me such a chuckle. So yeah, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. 3.5 stars. If you haven't read this, they are a fun time read. But yeah, it just wasn't as good as the first one. And sometimes it's like that, your first one, you absolutely fall in love with it, but then you get a little bit more realistic with your star ratings as you go on. So yeah, so that is that one. So next we are going to cut to the wheel, and we spun up. Okay, so I have finished The Man Who Died Twice, which was my last pick. So I'm here to spin the wheel again and find out what I'm going to be reading next. Okay, number 17 is The Gursery Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society is the book that I'm going to read. And wow, that is a massive title. All right. I'll get stuck into that. Looks like it's a historical fiction. So I'm going to get stuck into that and I'll check in when I'm finished. Okay, so the next book that spun up with and this is a title. Okay, this is a title. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. It is by Mary Ann Schaefer and Anne Burrows. So I got this book from down at my local shop here. It's like they call it a cheap shop, I guess. And basically, I picked it up for like $2. They get books in every now and again, and they're like $2, and sometimes you get real little gems, and this was one of those little gems. And I don't know what I was really expecting. So this is a historical fiction. It is set in 1946, and Juliet Ashton sits at her desk in her Chelsea flat where she is stumped. She is a writer of a witty newspaper column that she was writing during the war to bring, happiness and all that sort of stuff. The war has ended and she was writing something else and she just wasn't feeling it. And then Dauncey sends her a letter, says that he has this book. That's how they met. Then all these letters start going backwards and forwards. She's also talking to her publisher as well, which has been a lifelong friend. And and she ends up going over to Guernsey to meet all the people from this literary society. So I'm not going to say the whole thing. So Guernsey is the island. These are islands off the English coast, and they were occupied during the Second World War by the Nazis. And Elizabeth was the one that was the brainchild behind this because they got caught sneaking around after curfew, and so they made up a story to the commandant that they were a literary society. The potato peel part is where they were down on rations and all that sort of stuff, and so the pie is made with mashed potato, and then the outside of because they had no pastry or anything like that, the outside of it is potato peels to give it that crispiness. And so so basically that's how it all started, and there's a whole heap of other stuff that was a very, very glazed over, but the letters are just great. So it is all letters in here, and they're going backwards and forwards between all the different people, but everybody starts writing to Juliet to tell her their feelings about the society and Elizabeth. And then so she ends up meeting them all, going to the island, meeting them all, and the story unfolds from there. There's a little bit of a love story in here as well. There is it's tinged with sadness as well. There's a lot that does happen, but at the same time, it's not overly graphic or anything like that about anything that happened in the Second World War. It is just this group of people getting to know each other through letters, and then subsequently being in the same place with each other, and how they all connected and all that sort of stuff. So 4-star rating from me. I am having a fabulous year this year. I've had several 5 stars, and most of the books that I've been picking up have been a 3.5 to 4 stars. Some have been a little bit higher. If you like historical fiction and you like the style of writing where it's all letters, I forget the name, and it's Sunday morning and my brain's not working. I'm only halfway through my coffee. So if you like that sort of stuff, you'll definitely enjoy this. And everybody that I've seen that has read this, because it's now, like, it keeps popping up everywhere, they've said they've really enjoyed it as well. So it comes with high praises. So as I said, anybody that is interested in historical fiction, post Second World War, and just a group of people meeting each other and finding each other and all that sort of stuff, it's a great read. Spin again and find out what I'm going to be reading next. Okay, so book 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dog Rose Dirt by Jen Williams. All right, I'm going to get that out and give that a bit of a read. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. All right, so I'm here to do my wrap-up for A Dog Rose Dirt by Jen Williams. This was a great book. It's a thriller. It's got a little bit of psychological stuff in it as well, but it's a story based around a serial killer that has been in jail for 20 years. His name is Michael Rees, and we've got a ex-journalist who has been fired for whatever reason from her job, and and she is dealing with the death of her mother, who took her own life. And while she's sorting through her stuff, she finds some letters, and her mother has been corresponding with Michael Reeve for the last however many years, for quite some time, for decades. And so the story ensues from there, because the killings have restarted again, and basically she wants to find out why her mother killed herself, two, why her mother was writing to Michael Reeve in the first place, and she also wants to get to know her mother a little bit better. So basically, the story is basically focusing on Heather and her journey into finding out what her mother, or why her mother was writing, and also why she killed herself. And it's basically a back and forth timeline, and so we learn a little bit about her mum, and then we come back into the present, and where Heather is in her journey and all that sort of stuff. So as I said, it is a thriller. It's a great book. Like, I was really surprised at the ending of this. I did not see that twist coming. Like, I had my suspicions who I thought the killer was. Totally not on the right track at all. So yeah, I was just speculating. I try not to do that too much when I read a thriller, because sometimes you can wreck it for yourself. So I just sort of go into the story and try not to think too hard about it. But I did find I was thinking a little bit about this one. So I finished this 2 days ago. But I've been thinking about it, and I really liked the twist at the end of this one. I can't really talk too much about it, but there's a great bunch of characters in this as well. Like, you get to, in both the back storyline and also in the present, they were great supporting characters and whatnot. And there was a lot of creepy stuff that was happening and all that sort of stuff. Like, she felt like she was being watched and all that, and she was starting to think that maybe it was herself. But she got to talk to Michael because she was helping with the police investigation, because the murders have restarted up again, and they're almost identical to how Michael was killing them. So they're on the hunt for either the killer, because Michael has always claimed that he is innocent, or a copycat killer. And we know it's not Michael because he is in jail, and that's where she is visiting, and we know that from the get-go. There is some gruesome stuff in this that you might not like if you don't like gruesome stuff, so I probably would not overly gruesome, but it's enough to make think twice. That's really a really sick person doing that sort of stuff. But it's a great read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have actually given this a 4-star rating. I recommend it to anybody that likes a serial killer story with a bit of a twist. All right, that's all I've got to really say about this one, because anything else, I'm going to give the plot away and the story away, and I don't want to do that for anybody. So if you do end up reading it, or if you have read it before, hey, contact me down in the comments and let me know what you thought of it. As I said, I gave this a 4-star rating, and I got this out of the Book Grocer box, which is absolutely fantastic. I got the Advent box last year. So yeah, looking forward to getting this year's one. But anyway, I am moving on to the next book. Okay, so we're back again to spin the wheel. Let's find out what I'm going to be reading next. Okay, so let's find out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, I'm going to be reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Excellent. All right, I'm going to pull that out and give it a read and see what it's all about. And the book that got spun up was The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Basically, this is by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I always want to say Boyle. I don't know why, but it's basically 12 short stories and I'm including this for Shorty September as well, and you'll see why in a moment. So yeah, this was just a collection of his stories. I have never read Sherlock Holmes before, and I'm not too sure why I haven't read Sherlock Holmes before, because I had a lot of fun listening to this. I listened to this while I was diamond painting, and I was having a lot of fun listening to this. Just his quirkiness and the way he runs through everything and how he comes to his conclusions and all that sort of stuff really resonated with me. And Watson, for a medical professional, I would expect him to be somewhat a little bit more observant that he's played off in these books. And most of the time it is actually Watson. Anybody that's read Sherlock Holmes knows it's Watson that's telling the story. So, he doesn't write himself or explain himself in the best light. And he is very much in awe of Sherlock Holmes. So if you haven't read, they're very much adventurous. They're very quick, very to the point. They were well-rounded stories, in my opinion. I liked all of them. I don't think I have a bad thing to say about any of them, mainly because it's my first time and I was just listening to them and enjoying them for what they were. I think this one, the only thing I will say is, and I think I spoke about this on Sprints, I was listening to it and there's some dates in this for one of the stories, and it was supposed to be 1890, and the narrator said 1990, which took me back a little bit because I knew that this was a classic and they were written in the 1800s. And I'm like, and then I had a discussion, I think it was with Brittany, we were having a discussion. She was listening to a book, but immersive reading a book, and realised that the narrator had changed the colours of everything in the book. So it started a topic of conversation of how things have been different and through the books that we've listened to, because both Brittany and I do a lot of immersive reading. This couple of weeks I've just been doing a lot of audio because I've had a lot of stuff going on, and I've got my granddaughter here and all that sort of stuff, so it's really hard to sit down and read when she's here. She'll just keep coming up and talking to you and there's no point. So bless her little soul. But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to, I believe that there are some standalone novels. I don't have any on my shelf that I'm aware of, so I'm looking forward to hitting some of the book exchanges down in Brisbane with my daughter and possibly getting a few Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm really intrigued to keep reading more of his work. I really like it, and I also like the movie Enola Holmes. So yeah, like when I was thinking about that and all that sort of stuff while I was reading it, so I thoroughly enjoyed it and I highly recommend it. If you haven't read this, I think this comes off as if you look it up on Goodreads, it's Sherlock Holmes 3, but it's just 12 short stories. I think the longest one is about 30 pages, but they move really quickly, and there's just under 300 pages in this particular edition. So that is Sherlock Holmes. I have given this, for a short story collection, I'm giving this a 4.5 star because I thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's purely just on the vibe, the first time experiencing it and all that sort of stuff. So if I was to reread these again, I'll probably be a little bit more critical, as I'm not super critical if it's the first time I'm reading a short story collection. I tend to just go on the vibe. Did I have a good time? Did the stories, were they well-rounded? Were the characters good? And all that sort of stuff. And this hit the mark on all of it. I wouldn't say it's a 5-star read, but definitely a 4.5 star, a solid 4.5 stars. So if you haven't read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, may I suggest that you start with these, because they're, as I said, they're very short stories. All right, then I spun the wheel again. Okay, so we are here back to spin again. We are slowly getting through these books. All right, let's spin the wheel and find out what I'm reading next. Okay, so I am reading a short story collection that is inspired by Agatha Christie. So yeah, it's called Marple, and there's several different authors in it. So let's get reading to that. Okay, so this time I spun up Marple, which again was fitting right in for Shorty September. So this is another collection of short stories. This it was published, I think, in 2022. In 2022, and it is a collection of authors that have come together or were approached to write short stories revolving around Miss Marple, Miss Jane Marple. So I have never read any, well, as you know, I've only read one Agatha Christie, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. That was The Mysterious Affair at the Styles. And I have got a whole collection of hers, but I've watched the Marple series on TV. So I had a rough idea about her persona and all that sort of stuff. And again, this is a short story collection. There's 12 in it. We've got the authors. There's 12 authors, different authors. We've got the likes of Leigh Bardugo, we've got Kate Moss, Ruth Ware, Natalie Haynes, Jean Kwok, Val McDermott, just to name a few. Lucy Foley is another one that is on here as well, and they were all approached to write a short story. This, for me, was fabulous. I have actually given this... Are you ready for it? This is a 5-star read for me. That I did only rate it 4-star, but I've thought about it and I've gone back and I've just listened to a couple more of the stories and whatnot. And I think, you know what, this is actually vibe, the quirkiness of it, the characters were well rounded, the authors also really caught the... they didn't change her anyway. They really got who Miss Marple is, and they wrote Miss Marple as Miss Marple. So I felt that the characters were well rounded. You know, they kept the essence of Miss Marple. The stories were short, sharp, to the point. You could see her, you know, using her powers of deduction to work out who it is and all that sort of stuff. And I just loved how she, in each one, she's got a little sidekick with her, and they're totally aghast that you know, she picked all this out and all this. And through this, it was a common theme that she is because she is elderly, she's, you know, not noticed as much. So she gets away with a little bit more. She is able to observe a little bit more, and that's how she does her powers of deduction. So as I said, on reflection, I gave this 4 stars when I first rated it, but on reflection, I'm actually going to go and change my ratings to 5-star because I had a fun time reading this. I found it very hard to put down, and I had a lot of work to do, so it was a very, very much a struggle. I immersive read this one in the end. I was listening to it, but I really wanted to get right into the story and immersive read. And so, yeah, if you are looking for some great stories on Miss Marple, now I know that some of the diehard Christie fans may not enjoy the fact that these authors have written Miss Marple, but I actually think that they did Miss Marple justice very much in this book. So, as I said, 5-star, I highly recommend that you pick it up. If you're looking for some short stories, it'd be great to have on your bedside table, read a story a night. That'll get you through, you know, a week and a half, and you'll have some fun. There are some little giggly moments in this too, like she says stuff and I just sort of have a bit of a giggle and whatnot. And yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. But that is it for me this week. I am still currently reading Gilded Cage. I haven't finished it since Sunday rolled around, so I will continue on with that. That was another one that was spun up this week, but I've only got halfway through that and I'm thoroughly enjoying that at the moment. But I will talk more about that next week because I will be finished it. I have another vintage murder mystery for a bingo prompt this week, and I am going to go and spin the wheel and find out what I'm reading after the Gilded Cage, and I will check in with you all next week and let you know how I went. I am making it through that pile of books there. I don't know off the top of my head how many I've read at this point, but I will have that because we'll be midway through next time. Well, this is the second video for September of my reading wrap-ups. But anyway, that is it for me today. If you've made it this far, don't forget to leave me an emoji book down in the comments. Let me know, have you read any of these, what your thoughts were on them, especially the Marple one. I'd really like to hear what your thoughts are on that one, and also on Paula Hawkins. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe while you're here. Hit that like button and set the notifications to all, and then that way you won't miss out on any future videos. And as I said, that's it from me today. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.